Hi everyone. Today I'd like to talk to you all about methaqualone. Methaqualone, which went by the brand name of Quaalude in the United States, gained popularity for a brief period during the late 20th century. It was marketed as a hypnotic for the treatment of insomnia, and it was also used as a sedative and muscle relaxant. Before we talk about the drug's pharmacology and relevance to society, we should talk about its history. Its first reported synthesis was in 1951, published in the Journal of the Indian Chemical Society. Shortly thereafter, there was a published report of its antitussive action. That is, it suppresses coughing. Interestingly, this was published earlier than some reports of its use as a sedative, which became the primary reason it was taken. Following this, there were a few different reports of use as a hypnotic. Interestingly, some subjects reported that they preferred it over barbiturates, citing that they didn't wake up in the middle of the night. In most reports, however, its effects were comparable to barbiturates. After this, there was plenty of research on its effects, for which it was later patented. And in 1962, Wallace and Tiernan patented the drug for its sedative, hypnotic, muscle relaxant, and anticonvulsant effects. It was several years later people started to catch on and they started to abuse the drug. We'll hear more about this in a little bit. Not long after the drug started to be abused, it was withdrawn from the market and made a Schedule 1. This meant the drug could no longer be prescribed, and it was considered to have no medicinal value. So, where is Quaalude now? Not many places, actually, but a somewhat recent report from 2005 stated that its abuse was a problem in South Africa. However, Quaalude isn't a big problem anywhere else in the modern era. Now that we know a little bit about the history of Quaalude, we should talk about its effects. First and foremost, Quaalude is a hypnotic. It induces sleep. It's also a sedative and anxiolytic. It reduces irritability, relaxes people, and reduces anxiety. It's also a muscle relaxant, like most other sedative hypnotics. Users reported that euphoric effects were felt if they didn't go to sleep after taking the drug. Interestingly, all of these behavioral effects are common to sedative hypnotics, including alcohol, benzodiazepines, and barbiturates. For these reasons, Quaalude was marketed as an alternative to barbiturates. It probably wasn't actually a good alternative, and other drugs being developed around this time, such as benzodiazepines, had more favorable therapeutic windows. Now let's take a look at some of these effects in action.
We own the fucking company. We own the company. Don't know what a loot is? I'll tell you. Wait. Looks like those loots are working their magic on Donnie right now. Quaalude, as it is commonly referred to, was first synthesized in 1951 by an Indian doctor, that's dots not feathers, as a sedative, and was prescribed to stressed-out housewives with sleep disorders. But pretty soon, someone figured out that if you resisted the urge to sleep for just 15 minutes, you got a pretty kick-ass high from it. It didn't take long for people to start abusing Ludes, of course, and in 1982, the U.S. government Schedule 1 them, along with the rest of the world, which meant there was only a finite amount of these things left. No shit. You can't even buy them anymore. You people are all shit out of luck. What is trying to bribe an FBI agent? You think I'm that fucking stupid? No.
What the fuck you say? I can't understand. Say that again.
I said I'm with the FBI.
What the fuck you saying?
I said
Are you fucking high?
I said I'm with FBI.
John, are you fucking high? John, do me a favor. Stay where you are. Don't get behind the wheel of the car. I'm gonna send someone to pick you up. John!
After 15 years in storage, the lemons had developed a delayed fuse. It took 90 minutes for these little fuckers to kick in, but once they did, pow. I mean, I had skipped the tingle phase and went straight to the drool phase. These little bastards were so strong, I discovered a whole new phase, the cerebral palsy phase.
Why did people take Quaalude? It was abused primarily for its relaxing effects. It became a very popular party drug used to loosen up in dance clubs. And there were even reports of clubs that didn't even serve alcohol. Patrons would just eat Quaalude. Although it was prescribed for inducing sleep, it certainly was abused for this purpose, which became problematic with chronic use. It was marketed as a better alternative to other sedative hypnotics, but there wasn't sufficient evidence for that. Withdrawal from Quaalude is similar to withdrawal from alcohol, barbiturates, and benzodiazepines, all of which can be fatal. Although it's not commonly thought of as one of the typical date rape drugs, there is one particular high-profile case in which allegations were made against Bill Cosby, who admitted to administering this drug. Now that we know about the effects of the drug and its relevance to society, let's talk about the pharmacology. I'm going to ask our friend Batman if he knows anything.
I've been hanging out in the wrong clubs, Mr. Wayne.
I called Mr. Fox when your condition worsened after the first day.
I analyzed your blood, isolating the receptor compounds and the protein-based catalyst.
I may not understand any of that.
Let's look at some research. We can start by looking at what Quaalude doesn't do. What we are seeing here is the drug's ability to displace a radioactively labeled ligand from a given protein. Greater ability to displace means Quaalude has higher affinity for that particular protein. And what we see is Quaalude has very little affinity for any of the proteins involved in the regulation of neurotransmission of dopamine, norepinephrine, glutamate, opioids, cannabinoids, or serotonin. What Quaalude does bind, like many other sedative hypnotics, is GABA A receptors. Here we see two types of GABA A receptors. One has a delta subunit and one has a gamma subunit. These receptors are in xenopus oocytes, also known as frog eggs. A small amount of GABA is applied, which induces a small chloride-mediated current. With Quaalude co-applied with this GABA, the GABA-mediated current is enhanced in a dose-dependent manner. Now that we know Quaalude acts on GABA A receptors, the next question is which binding site it's acting on. In panel A, we see Quaalude effects compared to diazepam, or Valium, a benzodiazepine. Flumazenil is a benzodiazepine antagonist. What we see is that flumazenil attenuates the effects of diazepam on GABA currents, but it has no effect on the ability of Quaalude to enhance GABA currents. In panel B, black bars represent oocytes with an alpha-1 H10-2R mutation. This renders GABA A receptors insensitive to benzodiazepines. This mutation attenuated the effects of diazepam on GABA currents, but it had no effect on the ability of Quaalude to enhance GABA currents. All in all, this pattern of effects suggests that Quaalude does not exert its effects by binding to the benzodiazepine site. Another potential binding site is the barbiturate site. Here we see that Quaalude, or pentobarbital alone, slightly enhances GABA currents, but co-applying them has a synergistic effect in enhancing GABA-mediated currents. This pattern of effects suggests that Quaalude may have a different binding site from barbiturates. Here's another candidate for how Quaalude exerts its effects: the beta-alpha transmembrane site. This is where many general anesthetics act. In panel A, we see black bars, which represent oocytes with an N265M mutation. Previous studies showed this mutation attenuates effects of etomidate, a general anesthetic. This effect was replicated here, and it was shown that this mutation similarly attenuates Quaalude effects on GABA currents. This suggests Quaalude and the general anesthetic etomidate share a common binding site. Interestingly, structural similarities between these two molecules suggest they may bind the same site. We see Quaalude in green and etomidate in gray. All in all, Quaalude seems to be a positive allosteric modulator of GABA A receptors and acts independently of the benzodiazepine or barbiturate binding sites. It likely binds the beta alpha transmembrane binding site and may overlap with the general anesthetic site. Here are the references I made use of in the making of this presentation, and with that, I thank you all and will take any questions.